The fact that you want to get lots of good real estate debt, even now that real estate interest rates are off their all-time lows from a couple years ago, and really most all interest rates, I think to the lay person, it is one of those things that is easy to understand and yet hard to accept to get more debt. Since Americans have near record equity levels now, not enough people even ask where that equity came from. I mean, look, you probably don't have a big equity chunk in your home because you paid it down. You have fat equity in your home because it increased in value. Yeah, that's leverage, which was brought into existence by debt. Now, lay people can understand that, but yet it's hard to accept that truth.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Yeah, that's from an old school movie, Billy Madison from 1995. But did you ever get a reaction or a look like that when you shared abundantly minded GRE principles with them? Debt-free doesn't make sense. The wealthiest people have the most debt. The wealthiest and most powerful nation in the world has the most debt, but some people will still cling to old ways of thinking. They'll rationalize that debt is bad now because we'll say interest rates aren't as low as they used to be. All right. True. Well, also on the flip side, debt is better when inflation is high because it debases that debt. Inflation and interest rates tend to move in lockstep. So therefore, whether interest rates are high or low, that line of thinking cancels out. And of course, tenants keep debasing your debt by paying down your principal for you, no matter how inflation and interest rates are moving. And this all plays into how I was taught to think about money myself growing up, including the influence of my own grandfather, and I would go on to reject my grandpa's advice. As a kid, Grandpa told me to save money. You certainly heard that growing up. When I was about 20, I was visiting my grandparents on college break, and I still remember when Grandpa told me that when it's time for me to buy my first house, I should buy a fixer-upper. And though he never told me this next thing, he probably would have encouraged me to pay off your mortgage fast. I bet he would have said that one. Well, he meant well, and though I didn't deliberately spurn him, I have gone on to disregard all of my late grandpa's financial guidance. But see, Grandpa was born and raised in a pre-1971 world. His concept of money was shaped before Nixon depegged the dollar from the gold standard, and as we know, inflation ran rampant after Nixon depegged the dollar from gold. And then in the 1980s, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they began to sharply manipulate the way that the Consumer Price Index, the headline inflation figure, is calculated. They used weighting tricks and other tricks to make the soaring inflation figure appear smaller than reality. Well, I was born and raised in a post-1971 world, so rather than focus on saving money, I want to get out of dollars before they're debased by inflation. I never bought a fixer-upper home. Though I truly admire Grandpa for it, I didn't have the DIY and electrical skill set that he did. That just didn't come naturally to me. And now admittedly, and at its worst, maybe you can say that I'm part of the reason that Americans are less resourceful, or rather perhaps American life is better, or maybe it's that with progress we're all specialists now. I'd rather pay more for a home that's already new or renovated. This way I spend my time, that zero-sum game resource of time, I can spend that on my best and highest use, and not texturing drywall, and not hanging cabinets, and not laying tile. I borrow dollars, not save them. On rentals, both tenants and inflation pay back the debt. So inflation flips dollars upside down. And Grandpa might not believe how iconoclastic I sound now. The heresy. Today, I borrow, invest, and own assets that create residual cash flow, and I would even spend dollars in some cases before they're debased. And along the way, I provide contractors and service providers with work. I employ an ongoing property manager, and I provide families with good housing. I doubt that Grandpa knew about how debt compounds the power of financial leverage. There's something good to be said for hard work. And my grandfather showed me that on the farm, maintaining the tractor, loading the coal bin, harvesting crops, and feeding the chickens. I mean, dude was amazing. He was like the Shohei Ohtani of skill set diversification, but the world changed. Over the long term, today's abundance mindset beats Grandpa's grind set. I love him for wanting the best for me. Grandpa never wavered on that. Ultimately, really, he equipped me to learn what's best for me and what's best for others. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here because our Instagram stories poll about paid off properties, it asked you this question: which one do you prefer? To pay off your home ASAP or to leverage up and don't pay it off? Okay, how do you think that result went? Well, the percent that said pay off your home ASAP was only 16, and those that said leverage up and don't pay it off is 84%. Yeah, you get it. 84% would rather leverage up and keep borrowing against it rather than pay it off. Your own home is some of the best debt you can get. Low rates, fixed rates, a long payback period, and you can legally kind of renege and go get a lower rate when they fall as well. And mortgage terms are not quite as good on your rental properties, but they are still advantageous when you go compare that to everywhere else. And really another way to think about it is if you've got a $500K home, why would you tie up $500K in your home? You could perhaps have just $100K tied up in that home or in that rental property.